Hello, everyone. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We are going to be going over the most recent Arsenal news. So make sure you guys are getting in the comments and letting me know what you guys are thinking. Yeah. Missed you guys yesterday. I didn't go live yesterday because I needed like a day off, but I'm back, and international break is done now. And we're looking forward towards the Chelsea game, which is a very important game for Arsenal. I mean, every single game is important. When we play against Sheffield, I'll say the same thing. When we play against Burnley, I'm going to say the same thing. But it's a London derby, it's away from home. And, if we want to be in the title race, we actually want to win it, we have to get something at Stamford Bridge. And over the last couple of years, it hasn't really been a scary place to go. And I don't necessarily feel like it is that scary of a place to go. But they have a different team that's younger. And, they're feeling confident because they've won a couple of games. So I think they're going to really try to go after us. And so Arteta has a big decision to make. He has a huge decision to make at the weekend around how strong he goes. Does he go with his strongest 11? I think we all feel like we know what the strongest 11 is. Or does he go with what he's been going with and also make sure that we're strong for midweek? Because as worried as I am about Chelsea in terms of just like it's a London derby, we have to win it. I'm also concerned about the Sevilla game. It's away from home. Sevilla is not an easy place to go. Not in Europe. And Lens, it scarred me a little bit. It scarred me the way that we lost all of those duels, the easiness in which Lens was able to break us down and score goals. We have to beat Sevilla. And I'm looking at that game as like a must win. But Chelsea is also a must not lose. So Arsenal need to make sure that they have a strong 11 for the weekend, but also a very strong 11 for midweek. And so Arteta needs to get this right. Can we go away from home to Chelsea and not necessarily put out our strongest 11? Maybe we can, but I also have questions around whether or not our strongest 11 in our head is the same as Mikel Arteta. Early on in the season, Thomas Partey was not starting in midfield. He had the opportunity to do it, but he didn't. Maybe he's saving the Rice, Partey, Ødegaard midfield for big games. Maybe, maybe not. But going to Stamford Bridge without that midfield, especially if all three are fit, I do think is going to start some very interesting conversations around Thomas Partey's role, whether or not, Mikel Arteta rates these players as high as we do. He has opted for Kai Havertz quite a bit. Jorginho also comes into the fold, somebody who has been rested. I don't think he went to international break with Italy. So it's a very big decision for Mikel Arteta because the way that we manage Lens in Manchester City, although we won the game against Manchester City, and I think it was, a massive hurdle for us, I still have Lens in the back of my mind because Champions League is super important. Arsenal need to top the group. And so we can't take Sevilla lightly. I think Lens was a game that we went into without the right intention, and losing all your duels is just like ridiculous. Sevilla going to be chomping at the bit. And so I'm worried about, not necessarily worried, but interested to see how Arteta manages this, because again, this is something that we spoke about a lot. Over the last couple of months, is what we want to see from Mikel Arteta is his ability to manage the squad in Champions League as well as Premier League. So you have another big game away from home coming up in the Premier League, followed by a very difficult match away from home in Champions League. This is probably, to date, our hardest week so far as like this season, and this is going to tell me a lot about Mikel Arteta's ability to manage the team. So let's see what you guys are saying before we get into the nitty gritty. Showcase says, "Hey Jess, how are you? And I hate rain." I'm good. I am good. I can't complain. International break is over. I don't have to watch any more of that slop. Okay. No, I'm just joking. But I can't complain. Arsenal coming back up at the weekend. I don't know. Weather's good here in California. I know it's really cold in England now. So I don't know. People were complaining about the heat just a couple of weeks ago, only to be freezing their asses off a couple of weeks later. So yeah, I am feeling good, and I hope you're feeling good as well. Boy says Reece James doesn't matter. He's not fit. They just posted a picture, Chelsea, on their Twitter saying, like, showing Reece James on the grass. That doesn't necessarily mean that he will start. It's Wednesday now. But it could be a little bit of mind games, them pretending as though he's more injured than he is, and then he ends up starting against us. It is what it is. Reece James could be there or not. I still think the task is pretty much the same. I think Gusto is pretty good player. So I don't know if it's like the difference between, I don't know, having to start Ben White and Cedric, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, they just posted a picture of him on the grass, which could just be a bit of mind games. Johnny J. Wick says, big risk not going strongest at Chelsea. Here to there says, start Partey at the bridge, Jorginho at Sevilla. Martin L says, we have to put our strongest 11 in every league game. I don't think we have to be honest. I think we've won most of our games without our strongest 11. I think that's a testament to the strength of the squad. So up until this point, we have yet to see our strongest 11 play, or what our strongest 11 in our mind is, right? We played against Everton with Vieira. We played against Nottingham Forest we played 9 games with Nketiah up front, So I don't necessarily feel like going into every single Premier League game, we have to play our strongest. I think going up against your tougher teams, especially away from home, you want to do that, but you also want to make sure that you have some gas in the tank for a really important Champions League game that I don't think can be undermined at all. I know we're looking at Chelsea because Chelsea is like, they're our rivals. It's the first game. You need to beat what's in front of you first. But we cannot lose to Sevilla. We have to win. We have to win that game. Lens put us, basically, if we had beat Lens, we would have had the game, the group pretty much sewed up. Now it's thrown a spanner in the works. So Sevilla is a must win. I think Chelsea is a must not lose. That's how I see it, even though I want to win both, obviously. Ashoke says, as a Chelsea fan, I'm not confident against Arsenal this Saturday at Stamford Bridge. The thing is I feel like this will be Chelsea's biggest test so far. Early on in the season, you played Liverpool. Who else have you played? You played West Ham, which was a strange game because I thought Chelsea were the better team, but West Ham were able to beat them on the counter. I think they've done that to several teams so far. And since Chelsea has started playing better, albeit against really low-level opposition, we're the biggest test that Chelsea are going to have coming to Stamford Bridge. Now, the one thing about Chelsea that I want to put out there as well is that they don't give up that many goals. They don't. Defensively, Chelsea for the last 2 seasons have been one of the better defensive sides. Their issue has always been scoring goals. So Arsenal need to go with their most potent lineup as well. Like if we're going to get one chance, like it has to go in the back of the net. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think it's a big test for Chelsea, and it's also a big test for Arsenal's merit in terms of the title race, because it's a must not lose for us. But if Chelsea were to win, they'd gain a lot of confidence off of the back of it. So it's important for both teams, I think. Shelter says Partey should start at DM. He's the best we have in that position. We must stop this right back experiment. Must stop. He must start this right back experiment. Must stop. I hear you. Aha says strongest 11 for Saturday and maybe 2 changes for the UCL game. Johnny J. Wick says, imagine how confident Arsenal would be in every game with Tony at 9. Sean says Partey may still not be able to play 90, so Georgie is still a great option. If that is how Arteta goes, in all probability, the midfield will have either Georgie or Havertz. Both have motivation to play well. And that's what brings me to kind of going over how international break has went for some of our Arsenal players. I'm trying not to lean up so much, y'all, because when I lean up like this, I know y'all can see all of my lights and it's looking crazy. So I'm trying to look down a little bit more, but I needed to wear my glasses today, y'all. I could not do a contact. Okay. My eyes are too dry. So not like you guys care, but, so watching the US versus Ghana yesterday, the US played great. Balogun played exceptionally well also. Not that it matters to some of you guys anymore because he's not an Arsenal player. Matters to me. But Ghana didn't really give a shit about that game. I'll keep it 100 with y'all. They were jogging. Ghana were jogging. They got beat 4-0, but like they weren't playing anywhere near like a team that cared. It was a friendly, and it's the last friendly leading up to going back to your clubs. So you definitely don't want to get injured in a game against the US. Okay. Like, so I just want to put that into perspective. Watching Thomas Partey play, he came off about between the 60th and 70th minute, I believe. And he jogged the entire time. We know that Arsenal's medical staff or physio was with him, babysitting him, if you will, while he's on international break. And so Thomas Partey is somebody that I still feel like is probably not at 100%. And we may have to be a little bit careful with him because what you don't want is to re-aggravate an injury trying to play him 90 minutes against Chelsea. That's my feeling. He's been out for quite a bit of time, y'all. He was out from August 26th to the beginning of October. And we know in Thomas Partey time, that's 5 years. So it is going to take him a little bit of time to get up to speed. So do we want to throw him straight into the mixer? I'm not sure. Do you want to ease him in with 30 minutes here, and then maybe 60 minutes against Sevilla and then get him all the way ready because by the way, we have Newcastle coming up away. And Newcastle away for me is a more difficult proposition without our best 11 than Chelsea. So I'm looking at that match as like, yeah, that is the match that I want to see Thomas at 100% fitness. Now, Declan Rice played 90 minutes against Italy yesterday and looked phenomenal. He looked like his normal self. He looked great, so we don't have anything to worry about there. Saka, he's been resting on the couch for international break. Hopefully he'll come back in. We know Saliba is nursing a toe injury as well. So he's been resting. Like I said, Jorginho, he didn't go to, international break with Italy. So he's been on ice. And then you have our Brazilian boys who Gabriel played, I think, every minute for Brazil, and Gabriel Jesus played 90 minutes yesterday. So they will be coming, from South America, which is a difficult traveling day for them, but hopefully they'll be ready to go. So we will probably have our fittest squad yet starting, against Chelsea. In terms of like the options that we have, we'll have Gabriel Jesus as an option, which we didn't have at the beginning of the season. We'll have Zinchenko, who wasn't available at the beginning of the season. Thomas Partey, who hasn't been available all of September. You're going to have Tommy as an option. Kiwi also played for Poland. He's an option. I mean, not probably your number one option, but he's definitely an option. And so Arteta has some decisions to make. Eddie, he did not play against Italy. And so just a sidebar, Eddie should just go play for Ghana. I don't understand what this is. I don't understand what this is, but I don't think he's ever really going to cement a spot for England. So just go play for Ghana, baby. Like, it's a short career. Don't waste your time. And watching Ghana yesterday, they could really use Eddie and Kedia in that side. Okay. So tons of options. Hopefully Saka and Saliba are ready to go. But, I'm looking at Sevilla and Newcastle, and I don't know if I'm 100% ready to play Thomas Partey for 90 minutes. I don't know, because we know Thomas Partey, how he comes back. It's hard to tell whether or not he was good or not against the US because they were all jogging. So it's a tough one. Arteta has to get this right because, again, Chelsea is a must not lose. Sevilla is a must win. Then you have Sheffield, which is a good opportunity to rotate because you're at Sheffield at home. And then you have Newcastle away. And then you have Burnley at home. So you have some easier matches in there where you can rotate players. So you could go really strong, but equally, you don't want to go too strong and risk somebody like Thomas Partey, who's super important. It doesn't come back from international breaks or injuries very well. So yeah, Johnny J. Wick says Balogun leaves a conveniently Tony-sized hole in the squad. C. Wilder says, why have we stopped getting notifications? Honestly, like YouTube does that. I don't really know why. Like they're in charge of that. So if you have the notifications on and you're not getting them, talking to YouTube, they're like, well, we have little issues here, little issues there. What I would say is, like, as a rule of thumb, you will probably see a live show from me between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. UK time almost every day, except for game day. And game day, you're getting at least player ratings. So that's as a rule of thumb. If you're not getting a notification, just check YouTube, check the channel, and you'll probably see a live show there between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. UK time if you don't get a notification. You know what I mean? Tawanda says, Balogun didn't play for Arsenal competitively. I respect him, but let him go. Guys, he made his choice. Boy says, Eddie's got an England cap before Tony. He's comfy at England. He's not ever going to make it. He's not ever going to make it. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Arteta does against Chelsea. Now, I'll tell you what I would do. This is like, we're obviously going to do a whole preview and all that kind of stuff. We have to get more information around whether or not Saka and Saliba are fully fit. But I think what I'd go with is the same midfield that started against Manchester City, but in Thomas Partey coming in at the end again. That's what I think I would do. Just to eliminate the fear of Thomas Partey not being 100% fit and risking him for a game that I know for sure we're going to need him in, which is Newcastle away, which I'm looking at in the distance as, if I want Thomas Partey to be 100% fit for a game, it's definitely that one where you're going to get, you're going to need your bigger, a little bit more like off the ball team. That is a Rice Partey game if I've ever seen one. So, that's what I'm looking at. And I respect Chelsea, by the way, like as much as I can. I don't think that they're going to win the midfield battle against us if we have Jorginho, Rice, and Ødegaard. I don't think that means we're not going to touch the ball. I know Caicedo's a great player, but to me, it's not the same as having to go up against Rodri and De Bruyne and Gundogan, or, something like that, where you're at a complete disadvantage, or going against Liverpool at Anfield. I think that we can have a little bit more of a on the ball midfield and still be okay against Chelsea. But you guys let me know what you guys think. I know it's not right, like it's not always the best thing to look too far into the future, but again, I just view Newcastle as like the game where we need Partey to be at 100%. We could get away with Jorginho in midfield with Rice. Sean says, agree 100%. Newcastle will be a huge game. Very hard place to travel. If we get all 3 points, that would be a massive result. It's a huge result. And again, if we can get it, I'm not saying that I don't want Thomas Partey to play. I'm just saying that I'd rather split the time between Jorginho and Partey and maybe get stronger as the game goes on. But maybe we want to go 100%. I don't know. We're away from home. So I would imagine that Chelsea would be, the impetus would be on Chelsea to come at us, to attack us, to try to score against us. And we will be trying to not play without the ball only, but we don't have to win it in the first 20 minutes, which I like what we did against Manchester City. We didn't try to win it in the first 20 minutes and we got stronger. I actually wouldn't mind doing something quite similar against Chelsea away from home, and then really go as strong as possible against Newcastle in a couple of weeks. And also remember that we have Sevilla, and Sevilla is going to be a much more difficult game than I think people are saying. Sevilla are not easy to play in Europe. If you guys watched them against Manchester United last season in the Europa League, that place is on another level, when they're playing in Europe, like the environment. And we saw how we kind of shone away from the lights when we played against Lens. So, hopefully they've learned. But the last thing I want is to go up against Sevilla and think we can go in there with a weak ass lineup or anything like that. Like, that is a must win game. Like, what I'm saying is we'll be in so much trouble again in the Champions League if we don't win that game. But if we draw to Chelsea, we still won't be out of the title race. Do you know what I mean? It's so important that we win that game, you guys. I cannot stress it enough. Blaze says, we all knew that before. Wait, we all knew that before that Arsenal will play more games with Champions League return this season. This is why we can't rest some players against Chelsea just to go strong against Sevilla. I'm not even saying just rest. I'm not saying really rest players fully. I'm saying do not risk Thomas Partey for other games. Like if he's not 100%, Thomas Partey is the main person I'm talking about. He's the main person that I feel like we're all having these discussions about when to use him, when to go strong. And I'm saying that you can beat Chelsea with Jorginho starting that game and Thomas Partey coming in for the last 30. Then you can give Thomas Partey, 60 minutes against Sevilla. You can give him 100 minutes or 90 minutes against Sheffield. Then he's ready to go against Newcastle. We have to be really careful with Thomas Partey. Now, I'm not saying start Nketiah and shit like that. Like, I'm against Chelsea. You start your best forward line. You start Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli. They should all be fit, and there's absolutely no reason to start Eddie. There's none. There's no reason whatsoever to start Eddie against Chelsea. None. There's none. So we should go with our strongest, front line and our strongest defense, which is the defense that started against Manchester City, in my opinion. So I'm just saying, I don't think Thomas Partey should be risked this early if he's not 100% fit, because we know in Thomas time, he takes a little bit longer than everybody else. International break and coming back off of an injury, y'all. And we gonna need him against Newcastle. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. C is saying not looking forward to the Newcastle game because I'm watching it with the most unbearable Newcastle fan. He turns into a 5-year-old and raves in my face if they score. Well, yeah, the game 2 seasons ago probably wasn't fun for you to watch with that person if you're watching with them, because we obviously lost 2-0. But we have a decent record against Newcastle even since they've been good. We still do, so drew 0-0 at the Emirates and then beat them 2-0. So we have a really good chance of going to St. James and getting something and winning. Like, I think that's such an important game for us, because I actually think Newcastle are closer to the title race than anybody else. Like, when you look at their underlying metrics, they actually look very, very solid. They actually had a very difficult start to the season because their schedule was a lot harder than everybody else's. But now that things have kind of evened out, they look really good. Underlying metrics say Newcastle are about the second or third best team, And so I'm looking at that game as like, that is fucking important. Like, we need to go there and win. We need to go there and get something. Sheffield in between is a good game for Kivior to play, for Vieira to play, But that game is super fucking important to me. Let's see. Ziegel says, just Stamford Bridge is Arsenal's second home. Yeah, we've done well there in the past, but we really shouldn't go there resting on our laurels. Like, it's a completely different team. So we still have to go strong, but I just think we have to be very careful with Thomas. And also, you want to think about your substitutions. I read something that I found really interesting about this is coming from Art DeRoche. He said Arsenal ranks second for subs combining for Premier League goals since Mikel Arteta took charge. It's 8. 5 have come in 2023. So you could think about like the Reece Nelson, goal, things like that. A better squad helps, but there's still at times where it seems those on the bench can be trusted more. And he talks about, trusting the subs and stuff like that. And so I think it's important to also remember, like, not to start too strong and not to have like players that can come in and change the game like we did against Manchester City. So for me, against Chelsea, I wouldn't start Havertz. I would keep him on the bench and use him as an opportunity to, bring in somebody with a little bit more height and somebody that can hold up the ball. It may seem harsh, but that's how I kind of see him at this stage. Like, to start him in midfield against Chelsea, I think would be a mistake. It would be strange, it would be a strange choice. And to start him over Gabriel Jesus central, the only way that makes sense is if Saka is not 100% fit, which could be the case. And that's what I would go with. If for some reason Saka is not available, then you start Gabriel Jesus on the right and you put Havertz through the middle. You don't start Eddie. So, yeah, it's one of those where you also want to have players that can come off the bench and change things. Fabio Vieira, we know for chasing a game is really good. People are convinced that Trossard is better off the bench. He'll be coming off of the bench from here on out. Like Martinelli is fit now, so it is what it is. Hopefully he's fit and ready to go off of the back of his hamstring injury. So you'll have Trossard available to you. You'll have Vieira available to you. Havertz on the bench as well, probably, hopefully. You have Tommy that can come in. So we have options. So Arteta has, enough to his disposal where he should be able to figure out how to go strong enough against Chelsea where we win the game, but also if things are not going right, we can change things up. This is to me the most difficult week for Mikel Arteta so far. 2 very difficult away games. That we kind of need to win. So, yeah. Reckland Dice says, Jess, I'll be honest with you. I'm more concerned about Chelsea than Newcastle. Am I mad? Explain. I would love to know why you feel that way. Because that's, maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I need to be more worried about Chelsea than I am about Newcastle. I would love to know why you feel that way. Vince says, Georgie was the man of the match last season against Newcastle. Yeah, he was. But if you had Thomas Partey available, you would have played him, right? So I'm not saying Jorginho cannot play against Newcastle. I think he did a really good job. But what I'll say about that game is that what he did on the ball was exceptional, but he was still pretty poor off of the ball and we got ran through quite a bit. And had Newcastle been more clinical, we probably would the score would have been different. We were clinical, they were not. Jorginho, everything he did on the pitch to get us through the lines and on the ball to get us through the lines was perfect. But if I'm taking a holistic view of that game, I wouldn't do it again if I have Thomas Partey available to me. Thomas Partey is basically maybe less, just maybe 5% less good as Jorginho in terms of his passing, maybe 2%. But what he gives you off the ball is what you're going to need in that game. So if I had to do it all again and I had other players available, even though Jorginho played well, I'd probably still sit him. Rewatching that game and remembering all the times where they kind of just ran through our midfield and we're not clinical on the day. We deserve to win, but if we're honest, we have to be okay. Mosen says you need to adjust your lights on the camera. Bad reflection and glare from your glasses when you raise your head. Thanks. I was not aware. Jobu says it's tricky because he played 20 minutes. He had played 20 minutes, 45 minutes, and 60 minutes. So he should be able to be ready for Newcastle, correct? He should. And maybe I'm looking too far. Maybe I'm looking too far ahead. Because he's so important and because we're having a little bit of a imbalance in midfield that's, I think, hurting us in terms of our chance creation and stuff. I just want to make sure that we're being careful with a player that's going to help us balance the midfield again, because we need to get Ødegaard on track. I think having an imbalanced midfield is hurting him and it's hurting everybody in our attack. So if Thomas Partey is kind of the key to unlocking that, then I want to be patient with him and not overplay him too early, because once he's injured and he gets in the injured cycle, he's in it for a while. We know that. So it's important to not overplay him just yet because we're desperate to get him into the lineup because we're playing against Chelsea. I think Jorginho will be fine against Chelsea. Enzo for me is not some physically dominant player. He's good off the ball, but he's not amazing. Caicedo, you match that with Rice, Ødegaard, good off the ball, whatever, we're fine. I don't know who else Conor Gallagher, he's going to run around. So we should be fine, but maybe I'm wrong. Reckland Dice says, Jess, did you see that TP5 recovery tackle on Tim Weah last night? We need that guy fully fit and well managed. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's just, I just don't want to risk him, but maybe I'm being a little bit too, just because of the past. Maybe he's fine. I think he was jogging around because he was being told to jog around. And let's be real, it was a friendly that they didn't care about. It was more important to the US to make a statement than for Ghana to do anything in that game. So he could be fine. He could be fine. Sean says 3 games in 6 days with players who are back from injury will need management from Arteta so players remain fit but maximize minutes. Exactly. It's just like you said, 3 games in 6 days. So this needs to be, you want to get to Sheffield and be able to kind of like rest guys. And, Sheffield's going to be the game at home where I think you need to look at somebody like Vieira coming in. Please, Arteta, can you give Kivior some freaking minutes? Like, just give him some freaking minutes. Like, will it kill you? Will it kill you? Give the guy some minutes. Good game to see, Nketiah come back into the fold, maybe Trusty, so we have to get to Sheffield, not let that become a banana skin. But, these 2 games before that needs to be managed really well. Jason says, you guys shouldn't underestimate Chelsea. You know what? The thing is I don't think anybody's truly underestimating Chelsea. I do think that Arsenal are not really allowed to. It's like we're expected to win every single game, but if Arsenal fans expect to win, then we're underestimating the competition. I think we all understand that the Chelsea game is not going to be easy, but we all kind of expect to win because we feel like we're a good team. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't expect Arsenal fans to be, you can't expect Arsenal to win every single game and put all this pressure on Arsenal to win the game. But when Arsenal fans feel like they're going to win it or expect to win it, then you're underestimating the opposition. I think you can respect the opposition, but also expect to win a game. Those 2 things can mutually exist, in a conversation. And, I expected to beat Manchester United at home, despite feeling like that was going to be a difficult game and respecting the opposition. So yeah, I don't think Chelsea are going to be walked over, but do I think we should go into the game scared? No. I think if we play our way, we can definitely come out with the 3 points. Young Gouda says, I'm glad we can have a conversation about who rotate in. We now have depth. Could even say the injuries to the front line has helped get some guys games ahead of a very busy time of the year. I like the way, we are having conversations about depth, and I know people still don't love our depth and still don't think it's good enough, but I think the main reason why we don't trust the depth is because the manager doesn't, and he sometimes heavily relies on the starting 11, but these players are not shit. I very much so push back on the idea that Trossard, Vieira, Kivior, Tommy, these guys can't be trusted. I think they should be trusted more. I think they should be given more minutes. I think against Sheffield, we should give them those games, not necessarily like all of them in at once, but 3 or 4 mixed in with the starting 11. Let's go. Like, let's try it. I just feel as though the more minutes that they get, the more you can utilize them in situations where you need them, and they get more confidence and they feel like they can do the job. And I don't feel like they're used enough, but we do have better depth than we've ever really had. You're never going to have a situation where you have 2 world-class players that play exactly the same in every single position. So the manager needs to be flexible. He needs to trust his depth, give them the minutes, and hopefully they repay that confidence. Ahmed says, just thoughts on the Sandro Tonali and Fagioli, whatever, betting situation. Look, I need to see some lengthy bans, okay? Like the way that they did Tony, you can't just make him an example and then give everybody else a pass. They need long suspensions, just like he had. Go into therapy for your betting addiction or whatever, and hold corn because when Tony was maligned very badly off of the back of his betting situation. And I just don't feel like it could be swept under the rug because it's Tonali. Like it's bad, just like Tony, it's the same thing. And so you betting on Milan to win when you're playing for them, come on. Like you're not supposed to be doing that. So anyways, advantage Newcastle because I think Tonali is so fucking overrated. It's ridiculous. Like the first game of the season when Newcastle, I think they blew Aston Villa out of the water. And the commentators were, oh, look, they bought Tonali. He's so great. He was running around. That guy has been bang average ever since he started at Newcastle. He has been so average. It's been ridiculous. They were so ready to give him the signing of the summer. And I can name 5 or 6 signings, midfield signings that have been better than him. Off the top of my head, Maddison's been better than him. Rice has been better than him. Ward-Prowse has been better than him. Like, let's be for real. Like, the guy's been average. Advantage Newcastle. Willock is better than him anyway. I don't think they'll miss him at all. I did not understand why they bought him. He's not a number 6. I think they need a number 6 to push Bruno forward a little bit more. Because he can play a little bit deeper, but Bruno does his best work in just like the box 8 role. So yeah, advantage Newcastle, deserves a lengthy ban, but let's not act like Newcastle are going to be missing out on anything special because the guy was average. And if AC Milan knew, they played a freaking blinder, man. They absolutely rinsed Newcastle. They got a lot of money for a player that maybe they knew had these issues coming in down the pipeline and said, you know what, we're just going to move you over there. And now you're Newcastle's problem. So, and they've revamped their squad pretty well, AC Milan, off of the back of that. So yeah, I think he should have a lengthy ban just like Tony. Like, and if you guys have seen, my light has went out. You guys know this happens every single time, but you guys can still see me because I have another light. So it's fine. As long as you guys can see me. Yep, you guys can. And I know you guys are like, oh my God, what's that in your... If I turn down my screen, you guys don't see the lights as bad when I do like that. It just is what it is, y'all. I can't see. Your girl's blind. C. Wilder says, you watch Chelsea fans prematurely blow their load all over the internet if they win. I'll be back. I'll be on content blackout if that happens. Penodog is finished, says Havertz is a lightweight in midfield. Chelsea midfield would eat him alive. Emilio says, you was awful all games this season. You got lucky against City without Saka. You're a top 10 team up the Chels. Fair enough. Johnny J. Wick says, wouldn't be having this conversation if Ivan Toney was available. Recklin Dice says, I watched the Brazil in full last night. Jesus looked hella fit. We need that bombastic front 3, please. It's time. It's time. It's another decision that I think Arteta has to make to, I just don't see how you go into that game with Eddie and Havertz. I just don't see it, with everybody that's available. I just can't imagine it. So it's time to see our best front 3 play together. And maybe we start clicking as a attacking force because, as Emilio said, we've been awful all season and got lucky. So maybe if we play our best front 3, we'll look a lot better. Ahmed MCFC says, Jess, Leroy Sané wants Premier League return next summer. Where do you think he will end up? I've seen Liverpool fans saying he could replace Mohamed Salah in 2024 if he leaves for Saudi Pro League. He should come to Arsenal. I think we'd be the best option for him, to be honest. I would love Leroy Sané at Arsenal. Again, I'm not on this like every single player that we bring in has to be a child. I know that he's 27 or, he's in his prime now. So, you'd get 3 or 4 good years out of him, but the quality that he would add to the team is worth not having him for an additional 3 years, or like 6-7 years. You know what I mean? So I think Leroy Sané should come to Arsenal. Why wouldn't you want to be in London? You're in London, you get to work with Mikel, and we're the best. So I would take Leroy Sané at Arsenal. Actually, I would prefer him over Pedro Neto because I know what I'm getting. And I know I'm getting a very high quality player. Even though I love Pedro Neto, I'm just not totally like hell bent on everybody being 22, 23 coming to Arsenal. That's just me though. Sean says, Jess, only place I don't trust our depth is the striking role. Both Eddie and Jesus are not prolific finishers. But that's the other thing, Sean, is that this is why Arteta needs to stop with the Eddie thing anyway, is because having Jesus available to you and playing central allows you to create more chances, and creating more chances for a team that's not necessarily clinical. You can't be creating 1 or 2 chances a game and have Eddie being the one that you're relying upon finishing because he's not clinical either. So you have to pick the lesser of 2 evils. And I know that that's not really the way that the right way to speak about Gabriel Jesus, because I rate him and I think he's a world-class player that makes us better, but he's not clinical. So you need him out there to help you create the chances, and you'll get more chances for Saka and Martinelli if he's out there. And then out of the 6 chances that you create, you'll score 2 goals. You know what I mean? So that's why it's important to get Eddie out of the lineup, because it's not that he's playing poorly. It's just we don't create enough chances with him. We just don't. Um, yeah. Vince says we are not clicking because Ødegaard role is changing, probably because of Partey's absence, maybe. Yeah, it's one of those where I just think that Ødegaard's being heavily like criticized off of the back of being out, like being out of form, which is normal for players. Every player goes through ups and downs in terms of their form. And Ødegaard's no different. And because he's out of form, instead of backing him and, knowing that he's going to get back to his best, we decide that it's a bigger problem and he needs to be removed from the team. And he's like not this great player. And because other players are doing well, we start to hate our own players, which is to me just like the biggest sign of insecurity. I don't care that Maddison is doing so well. That doesn't make me not love Ødegaard or think Ødegaard's, quality. But because other players have done well, people have turned their backs on Ødegaard. Ødegaard is doing a lot of work in midfield because of Havertz is not doing even 50% of the work that Xhaka was doing last season. So who has to pick up the slack? Zinchenko and Ødegaard have to pick up that slack. And Rice doesn't necessarily play the 6 role exactly the same as Partey. So I do think Ødegaard's playing a lot deeper. If you actually watch the game against Manchester City, he was very deep, trying to get us up the pitch, hold on to the ball. Like his role was definitely to receive it under pressure and to be a release valve in midfield. And he did a good job doing that. But as an attacking force, both sides, neither side were very good attacking wise. And Arsenal were not good attacking wise because Ødegaard wasn't doing well. It was just both teams nullified each other. Both teams are very good defensively. And so for me, Ødegaard is somebody that I just think we have to wait to let the midfield has to be balanced before I actually really, I have to look at that position a little bit differently, because he's definitely playing deeper. He's definitely not playing the same role. And the midfield is not really functioning properly with Havertz in it. So to take all of that into consideration, and probably just the fact that he's just not playing as high of a level as he was last season, and he's having a dip in form, is probably all it really is. But some of the Ødegaard takes and stuff for me have been quite a bit, kind of a lot for a player that scored 15 goals and got 7 assists last season. You would think that you would back him a little bit more, but as usual, we eat our own. But that's why I think Partey is so important, because you need that balance in midfield, and maybe Partey coming back in and playing in the 6 and Rice playing a little bit higher will give us the balance that we need in order for Ødegaard to push up a little bit more. But he needs to help Rice a little bit, and so Ødegaard coming a little bit deeper. There's a disconnect, there's no Jesus. Jesus is not coming deeper. Like there's a lot of, kind of like fractures in the connections that we had last season that just aren't there anymore, because we've added new players into the side. So we have to let things kind of level out a little bit. But the Ødegaard stuff is just a little much for me. It kind of stinks. JT says that this team this weekend, God willing, shouldn't consist of Jorginho, Kai, and Eddie. Honestly, I don't mind Jorginho as much as other people. Like, I think Jorginho with Rice is perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think the balance is fine there. I think Jorginho played really well against Manchester City, to be honest. And if that allows Thomas Partey to get back up to peak fitness, and for us not to have to rush him, I would prefer to play Jorginho for 60 minutes than try to play Thomas Partey and him potentially, get injured again. I think we need to be really careful with Thomas. But I don't consider Jorginho on the same level as Kai and Eddie at all. I actually put Jorginho a lot closer to Trossard in terms of our, and Tommy in terms of our squad depth, in terms of what they can offer us. Chosen One says, people saying Odie needs to be upgraded on the last stream. was laughable. I remembered who said. The thing is just like, why when our players go through, you know, bad runs of form, why do we have to completely like eat them alive and kill him? Like, why can't we just be like, and he'll come back into form? Because he will. He'll come back into form, and then all of this will look like nonsense. Salvatore says, unfortunately, even if Ødegaard drops stinkers back to back, he won't be replaced. Mikel is kind of biased. Why would he be? Why would he be dropped though? The thing is if not Ødegaard, then who? Who's going to come in and give you what he does on the ball and also do what he does off the ball, lead the press? Who can you rely upon in the squad that's going to do that role? Is it ESR? No. Is it Vieira? No. Is it Kai Havertz? No. So why would you drop Ødegaard? Because even when he's dropping stinkers, he's still better than any other option that we have in the squad. So, and those are just the facts. Those are just the facts. Like, there's certain players in our team that even at 5 and 6, they're still better than whatever we can bring off of the bench. Saka and Ødegaard are two of those players. So, I think it's better to just hope Ødegaard comes back into form than trying to look at some reason why he should be dropped. When are you going to stick? You think ESR is going to do what Ødegaard was doing in the second half against Manchester City? You think we win the game? No. You think Vieira is going to do it? No, I don't think so. So, no, you're not going to drop your captain because he's not having his best game. Even his worst games, he still provides so much for the team that he's not a luxury player. He's not like Ozil. He's not a luxury player. He offers you so much. That's why he's so good. I think we really underrate a lot of the things that Ødegaard does and think it like any other player is going to give you that. Most attacking players that play in the 8 role or the 10 role, if they're not scoring goals and getting assists, you have to take them off the pitch because they're not doing anything. They're not offering you anything. Ødegaard's not like that. He cannot score a goal and not get an assist and still help you win the game. And I think he's being killed now because Maddison is playing well. Like, can we not be so insecure? Blaze says, just some Arsenal fans are insecurity and reactionary, so I'm not surprised about our fan base hates some players. I think it's just insecurity. Other players play well, and because other rival fans are comparing their players to ours, because guess what? Ours are the top of the tree. It's like every time that somebody gets a decent winger, they start comparing him to Saka. Every time they get a decent attacking midfielder, they start comparing him to Ødegaard. So you should take that and realize that they want their players to be just as good, if not better than ours. So our players are good. Like, who cares? Like, if Maddison is playing exceptionally well, but that doesn't mean we have to like kill Ødegaard. And that's actually when it happened. I think if Maddison never moved to Spurs and he wasn't doing what he's doing, I don't think people would have as big of a problem with Ødegaard. Christopher says Ødegaard is our leader. says Ødegaard is playing different roles and this team is gaining chemistry with Havertz and Rice are new. Boy says, don't tell me it's another ESR merchant. Chosen One says, just like when Saka tailed off at last season, now he's balling and everyone was hating, loves him again. That's always the way it goes. I agree. Zitch says, Georgie and Kai in the team against Chelsea would love both to score against their old team. I don't want both of them, but I would be okay with Jorginho starting. Yeah, I think it's going to be I would love for them to score against their old team, but really I just want us to get the 3 points, get out, so I'm less concerned about that. But yeah, Jorginho would be okay to start. Kai, not so much, unless Saka is not fit. Mark says Ødegaard is not even out of form. He's playing fine. It's not even like I really just feel like it's because other players are playing well, and we can't handle rival fans telling us our players are shit, because we just can't. It's the same reason why Ben White never gets any respect, is because when he had that bad game against Tony and Brentford and the media was going in on Ben, instead of saying we're going to give him time and it was just one game, Arsenal fans doubled down on it, because we just are very insecure and do not stand up for our players when other rivals or the media are going in on them. We tend to chime in as well because I don't know, it's like a weakness. I don't get it. We know Ødegaard is a quality fucking player. So let's just wait for him to come back into form. It's normal for players to go in and out of form. It's just not that big of a deal. Um, Especially because we're still winning games. I could understand more if we weren't winning the games. That would change, I think, the conversation slightly, but we're winning games still, and Ødegaard is still a big part of that. Sean says Odie is part of the spine end of really Saliba, Rice, Saka also, and Jesus up front until we get a forward who challenges for that space. Chosen One says 5 GA in 9 games, and he's out of form apparently. Blaze says Maddison and Ødegaard are both good players. We can appreciate both, but not divide them. Samuel says, don't talk about my boy Ødegaard. You guys know I'm very like, I love Ødegaard. And if there's a play, like a time where it becomes obvious that, Ødegaard needs to be like upgraded upon, or, he's no longer as effective as he used to be, I'll be the first one to say, maybe that's true. I just don't think that time has come. I think we're being a little bit harsh. But yeah, I think this game against Chelsea is going to be super important for Mikel and how he manages the team over the next, week, because of all the games that we have to play and the differences between those games. Chelsea, London Derby, they're going to go with a very strong lineup. They're confident. We need to not lose that game at the very least. Sevilla must win away from home at a difficult ground. Sheffield could become a banana skin if we don't take it seriously enough, but it's also a very good opportunity to rotate. And so it's a big week for Mikel Arteta as far as I'm concerned. Wisdom says, hey, Jess, I think I'm in love with you. You're so nice. Although I'm still mad at you a bit about how you handled the Thomas Partey saga earlier this season. I know people don't like it. I know people don't like, I know it. But it is what it is. Thomas Partey was up for sale, y'all. And Rice has replaced him, like I said that he would. He's not playing the 8 role. He's playing the 6 role. And Thomas Partey is hard to upgrade upon. He is. Quality player, but unavailable. And just like we spoke about in the summer when you guys were coming for my neck, we needed to bring somebody else in because Thomas Partey is not available. And just like clockwork, he got injured in August. So I hear you. But you guys know I'm always going to give you like my real and honest opinions about things, despite knowing that people have love affairs with certain players that, they just are emotionally attached to, like Ramsdale, like Thomas Partey. So I'm willing to take the heat. It is what it is. I think Thomas Partey is an exceptional player, but I don't think we could have went into the season with just him as our 6th option. I just don't. Reckland Dice says new manager bounce for Sevilla. I pray not. For those of you guys who don't know, they have brought in a new manager. So we could potentially be dealing with a new manager bounce for Sevilla as well. They've been poor, I think, so far this season. So it's just our luck. I'm looking at that Sevilla game and I'm like, y'all, we got to win that. And Lons did not give me confidence that we had it under control, that we could go to European away grounds and deal with the volume of the crowd and the energy and the backs against the wall. And, the fact that European sides don't respect you. I think Lons did not give a shit that we were Arsenal. They were going to play their way. They did not just sit back into their box and defend for dear life. They had a very well thought out plan that worked. And PSV, they came out and played us too. They didn't sit back in the box at the Emirates. They played their way. They got slapped, but we're going to have to go there and they're going to play the exact same way. So we have to get comfortable with the idea that like teams in Europe are not going to respect us. The grounds are different. They're louder. They're just different. And we didn't deal with it well. And so I'm worried about Sevilla. And I think we need to go really strong, against Sevilla and not be arrogant, because if you don't win that game, you're in trouble. We have to win that game. Boy says people still can't believe Rice comes in to replace Partey and not Xhaka. I was catching so much heat for that, but I was like, but y'all, Ornstein said it. I don't know. It is what it is. But saying that, I've already said during this stream that despite everybody thinking that I hate Thomas Partey, I do feel like he's important to the team. And we need to manage him properly over this next week or so, because I see Newcastle on the horizon as the game that he needs to be at 100% fit. That's the one, you know. Um, and after international break, he starts looking. He's no longer 30; he's 40. Chosen one says, "Trust me, Jess, that's not going to happen. He's only 24, only going to get better. Don't care what certain people say about his poor form. Who do we bring in instead? KDB, like, be serious." Speaking about Ødegaard, I don't really get it. Like, I don't really understand the dislike for, or the heavy, harsh criticism of Ødegaard. I don't know. I don't get it. Over the last 2 seasons, he's been one of our best players, and one of the bigger reasons why we've become the team that we've become. So it's going to take a while for me to get to the point where I'm ready to move him on or start somebody else above him. And I think there's other players or other positions where we can upgrade upon first, um, and then look at that down the road. But he's great. Like, I don't understand why we're so upset. Z says Sevilla away is tough, very tough. You would know. You're a Manchester United fan. Blaze says, a question, Jess, if Arsenal lost the game against Sevilla, which I hope not, do you think it will be a red flag for Arteta? His European record is not great. Let's call a spade a spade. His European record is not great. And, we've given a lot of grace, I think, to Mikel Arteta and saying, it's because he hasn't had the players, or he hasn't had this. He has the players. He's had the time. We're in Champions League now. We need to get out of the group. And not only that, we need to top the group. So Lens for me was a big missed opportunity, because if you win that, you're pretty much you're solid. We lost. We didn't even draw the game. We lost. So you have to beat Sevilla. If you can't go away to Sevilla and get a nasty 1-0 win, then I think you're in trouble, and you can't go out of the group stages. You can't. It would be a failure, for a team that's rated so highly to not be able to get out of the group. So, it's a big game. That's what I'm more concerned about that than Chelsea at this stage, because you can draw to Chelsea and still win the league, but you cannot lose to Sevilla. You can't. You can't. So, and Lens was not a good indication of our merit in Europe. It just wasn't at all. So, Mikel needs to get it right. He needs to get it right. Kasi says, great show, Jess. You said everything I was thinking out loud. Insecure, some of our fan base. Yeah, I think there's some insecurities there. Let's see. Boy says, when Martinelli was in poor form, that's when his best touches of the season occurred. Arsenal fans don't know what they're looking at anymore. And the thing about Martinelli is, when Trossard came in, I did say that I felt like, Trossard should maybe start some games here because Martinelli is out of form. But it's just out of form. Like, I didn't change and revise history on Martinelli and say that he's not a good player or we need to go buy somebody else or anything like that. A player that's out of form, is going to come back into form at some stage, So I thought Martinelli needed a couple games to sit out, and he did. He sat a couple of games down, or I think he sat one game out. I think he scored the goal against Leicester, and then we won 1-0. Trossard came in, and then Trossard started against Aston Villa, and Martinelli came in at the very end of that game and scored the fourth goal. And then I think he came back into the team. So sometimes players just need one game out. Maybe Ødegaard should sit against Sheffield. That could, I would not mind seeing somebody else play against Sheffield in maybe that position, or maybe even just for like 30 minutes at the end of a game. But there's a difference between like Martinelli and Trossard switching, and Ødegaard and Vieira switching, or Ødegaard and Havertz switching. Not to do hierarchy, but I just don't think Saka and Ødegaard. I think Saka and Ødegaard and Saliba are on a completely different like level in terms of our ability to recreate what they can do with players that we have than Martinelli. So, and Martinelli is still very important. Like, Martinelli is just one level below, I think. But, Ødegaard may need to sit out, maybe just get some rest against Sheffield, like come out for the last 30 minutes or something like that once the game is won. But you will feel like a very big difference between him being in there and other players being in there, where Trossard, even Trossard, I don't know. Maybe Martinelli is on that level with them too. That you may want them to sit out when they're out of form and you think whoever's on the bench is going to do a better job, but you do feel a difference. You will feel the difference. So, it's hard to really advocate for Ødegaard to sit out or Saka to sit out or Saliba to sit out because we don't have anybody analogous in the team that can do it. Even Trossard, he tries to do what Martinelli can do, but the system really requires a Martinelli in there. So maybe I'm doing Martinelli a disservice. All four of them kind of need to be playing, even if they're out of form. It's tough. It's tough. Vince says, Jess, I'm concerned about Arteta and guessing he's more focused on dethroning Pep than making history in Europe. What do you think? Well, I think we have a better... I don't know. I think based on what I don't know. Do you guys think we have a better chance of winning the Premier League than we do the Champions League? Like you would imagine that because we came second, that we would get closer this season, to maybe winning the Premier League. Winning the Premier League is hard, but winning the Champions League, you can get a little bit of luck. But we don't have very much, credibility in Europe, especially not this team. So, if I'm Arteta, I think I would probably focus on the Premier League just a little bit more because I think finishing fourth in the Premier League is and getting to the quarterfinals in the Champions League is worse than, focusing on the Premier League and maybe going out a little bit sooner in the Champions League. I don't know. It's a tough one because Manchester City are not going to be anywhere near as bad as they are for the entire season. Like they're not even bad, by the way. They're actually still very good. But they'll get KDB back, Rodri will be back, and they'll start playing well again. So, do Arsenal really have a decent chance of winning the Premier League? I don't know. But if I had to choose between, making a really good play for the Premier League and really pushing for the Champions League, I don't know. I can't decide, y'all. I can't decide. I can't. But I would imagine that Arteta would probably feel like we have a better chance of winning the Premier League. Do I blame him? No. If he's coming from a Manchester City standpoint of things, he would probably want to be a really good league team and then focus on Europe, because being really good in the league allows you to get more chances to be good in Europe as well. We have to keep that into consideration. If you're not good in the league, you're not going to get that many chances in Europe. You have to qualify for Champions League year in, year out. Even if we go out in the quarterfinals or the round of 16, we still need to qualify for it again and try again. So focusing on the league, I think is strategic in a way because you focus on the league, it gives you another chance to be good in Europe. But being good in Europe, can only get you so far, if that makes sense. Finishing fifth or sixth in the fucking league, what are you going to do? Can't be in Europa League. So I could kind of understand Arteta focusing on the Premier League because that gives you another chance at Europe. Gives you another chance at Europe again and again and again. And that's kind of what Manchester City did. They focused on being a good league team. Then once they got a monopoly over the league, they really started focusing on the Champions League. And then it took them a while to win it. I think it's very unlikely that Arsenal come back in the competition after being out of it for 6 years and wins it. So it's a tough one because I would love the Champions League. But do I think we have a really good chance of winning it? It's like a 1 in a million chance to me. Tawanda says European football is trivial and unpredictable. Don't take it personally. Lawns are giant killers. Salvatore says, ain't no one trolling. He is inconsistent. If you can't see that, then you're delusional. When it affects us in the future, we'll see what you'll spew. Fair enough. If you think he's inconsistent, And fair enough. How could you be inconsistent and get 15 goals and 7 assists in one season, though? That's very difficult to do if you're dropping, fives and fours and fives every other game. Chosen One says, all right, that's fine. I trust in the guy who put up 23 goals and assists last season and already had five in 9 games on poor form. Exactly. People just say anything these days. Ødegaard is very consistent. Um, you can't be inconsistent and score that many goals. Doesn't make sense. Costi says, we need to build our European status. We have not been good in Europe for years, even under Wenger with some of our best teams over the years. Only in 2006, we did well and that loss still hurts. Yeah, Costi, no, it is something that we need to do. It's something on the agenda, but it's so difficult in the Premier League because it's not like La Liga or Bundesliga where you can kind of be an average team and still qualify for the Champions League year in, year out. The Premier League has about 6 or 7 teams that can qualify for the Champions League. So, in order to get the right to gain European status, you have to be good in the Premier League and you have to be fighting for the Premier League because, like, I think if you start shooting for just qualifying for the Champions League, so getting top 4, you'll miss out on it. So Arsenal have to focus on trying to win the league. That will give us the ability to qualify for Europe year in and year out and give us the ability to actually build up credit in Europe. But if you don't focus on the Premier League, you don't get that opportunity. So we have to make the Premier League our focus, I think, because that's the way that you're going to get the opportunity to do it. Um, yeah, that's the only way I can really, that's the only way I can really think about it. Um, Samuel says, guys, we didn't win the Premier League for the last 20 years, and we should go for the Prem. Champions League is one good moment, and that's another thing is, don't we need to win the Premier League? I mean, for me, the Premier League just maybe because we've always been such a domestic giant that I view the Premier League and the FA Cup so highly, and maybe I should view the Champions League a little bit bigger. Maybe it's because we never won it. But I think the Premier League is something that if you win that and you become a consistent Premier League, title contending team, you'll get those opportunities to fight in Europe, which some of that is luck. It is the right draw. You have to make sure that you avoid these teams, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that's a good point from Samuel. Boy says, remember, we are supposed to maintain faith in Holland, even though he's failing to score it in the last 3 games, but not Ødegaard. He plays for Arsenal. The best players go through bad runs of form. Gunny says, Jess, this is the weakest CL we've seen in 2 decades. This could genuinely be the best chance Arsenal have since 2006. City, Bayern, and Real are the only real threats if the competition is taken seriously. At the expense of the Premier League, not for me. Because I want to be able to try again. I get what you're saying. I think it's weak on paper. I also think we look on paper at things and then forget that we watched our team that's been better on paper than most teams that we played in Europe and still not been able to beat them. Villarreal, Sporting, teams like that were on paper, we thought we were better and we still performed rank lawns, So I think on paper, Europe looks easy because the teams, you don't really rate them. But when we're playing those games, I know you guys don't feel like they're easy. You kind of felt like it's easy. And if it was difficult for us to get far in the Europa League, it's going to be hard for us to get the Champions League. I think it's going to be like you come up against teams like Atletico Madrid, that have players that have played in that competition every single season. I do think it's hard, so things on paper aren't always as easy as they seem. Like on paper, we're probably like the 4th best team, but in real life, it's going to be hard, Marco says, Jess, do you think Chelsea will sit back against us a bit more than they have done so far this season? No, I don't. I think they're going to come at us. I think Pochettino is going to try to make a statement. I think they'll come at us. They're going to be at home. It's going to be a more open game, I think. So yeah, Chris Says all the clubs we consider the top clubs in the world have won the UCL. Arsenal definitely need to add that to our locker, but that doesn't negate the importance of getting back to winning the league titles. It's hard to do both. I think it's hard to do both at the same time. Don't you guys? Do you guys think that, Arsenal have the ability, or have you seen a team do that? Like, again, Manchester City heavily focused on the Premier League first. And became a title winning side year in and year out, or at least competing for the title year in and year out, because that gives you the ability to be in the Champions League. Then they started focusing on the Champions League when they had the Premier League locked. I do think it's a hard ask to say, you know what, I want Arsenal to win the champion. I want Arsenal to win the league and be able to focus on the league, but also focus heavily on the Champions League. And to feel like that's feasible for a team that hasn't been in the Champions League for 6 seasons, and almost like 80% of the team has never played in the Champions League before. So to expect that, but also expect this young team to go up against Manchester City and potentially win the Premier League, I think you kind of have to pick one or the other. But that doesn't mean you have to bomb out of the Champions League. That's not what I'm saying. Like, a respectable exit for me is the quarterfinal. Respectable exit is the quarterfinal. But if you are challenging for the league and you make it to the quarterfinal, then next season you get another opportunity. But if you heavily focus on the Champions League, you get to the semifinal and you go out, but you didn't focus on the league and you don't have that opportunity again, you'll probably want to look back on that, Premier League campaign again and say, couldn't we have went a little bit stronger here? So I think it's difficult to say you want to do both at the same time when Arsenal are a fallen giant that over the last 15 years have just been kind of not really competing, so we have to rebuild. And I want to see us focus on the Premier League, because that gives us the opportunity to continue in the Champions League year in and year out. That's where I'm at. Ahmed says, Jess, why is everyone talking about Haaland? I know he's been poor at the moment. Once he gets back his form, he'll be unstoppable. I hope he comes back stronger after the break. They're talking about it because he's a good player that's out of form. Like, first of all, there's no KDB, and I think no KDB means a less effective Haaland right away, because, guess what? Some players need other players in the team to unlock their best abilities. That is football. It's not just at Arsenal and like, oh my God, if so-and-so needs so-and-so, then, is he really a good player? Haaland is not going to create for himself. So he needs an elite creator in the team to allow him to do what he does best. And KDB and Haaland go together like peanut butter and jelly. Like, he needs that. And he's a little bit out of form. Like, it happens. Haaland is going to get his at some point. Blaze says, Jess, don't you think that winning the Premier League, Arsenal could have confidence to win the Champions League in the future? Yeah, I think Arsenal just need to win a trophy, no matter what it is, this season, to get these players the confidence. So that's where I'm at with that. Chosen One says, Jess, in your mind, do any of the current Arsenal players have a shot at being the all-time UCL goal scorer if they stay long enough, assuming we qualify every year? I'm gonna say, yeah, I do. I think Martinelli and Saka have that ability. Saka's already gotten off to a good start. And Martinelli has yet to play in Champions League, but I think that that's his competition. I think he's going to give us the edge in Champions League. So I think they can. I think they can. I think they have a chance. Here to There says, have to disagree, Jess. Arteta pawned off Balogun, wasted on Havertz. We could have had 2 or 3 solid rotational pieces easily. He has a 40 million backup goalkeeper. That is all on Arteta. What are we disagreeing? What were we disagreeing? What are we disagreeing about? Somebody's telling me to look at Fabrizio Romano about Reece James. Reece James and Axel Disasi were both involved in Chelsea's training. Important news for Mauricio Pochettino in the next crucial games. Yeah, so Disasi stayed out and Reece James also stayed out, but who knows if they'll start or not. To me, they're still a very good defensive side with or without Reece James. What it's going to be about is what he can add going forward. I think Gusto has been good for them, to be honest. So Reece James for me coming back in is what it is. Disasi is just another defender. To me, he's not that much better than anybody else. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Ahmed says, we always struggle in big games when KDB and Rodri was missing. We need to learn how to play without them. Dale Carragher says, it's all about the Premier League for me, not even close. At the same time, I expect us to play very strong teams in the Champions League. Exactly. So, okay, I I think I'm a little bit more interested in the Premier League and going after that title than the Champions League. But you also never know what situation you're going to be in. So if it comes down to it and we're second but we have a really good opportunity to go farther in the Champions League, then you have to take it the situation as it comes. So I'm not saying just bomb out of the Champions League, but I do think we have to go really strong in the Premier League, strong enough to stay in the title race. And we don't have to be at the top of the table right now. We know that better than anybody now, that we don't have to be top of the tree now, but come January, February, we need to be right in the mix. And I think we will. Against Chelsea, I don't think you have to go with Partey, Rice, and Ødegaard right from the start. Give him 30 minutes at the end. Go with Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli. Go with your strongest back line. I think that's more than enough to beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Against Sevilla, you go with another strong lineup because you have to win that game because you got to win the group. And then against Sheffield, you get an opportunity to rest some players, maybe after the game is won. So yeah, it's all on Arteta right now in terms of how he rotates the team, the decisions that he makes, making sure that he gets the balance right between, you know, w- strong lineups because we have to, but also managing certain players' minutes. Because if Saliba and Saka and Partey are on the edges of injuries, you want to make sure that you're not mismanaging them, you know, just for the sake of it. You get against Sheffield, we don't need Saka to start if he's not 100%, or Partey or Saliba. So it's all up to Mikel Arteta in these next, from Saturday, 6 days, 3 games. You gotta do the business. You gotta get it right. Um, Big days ahead for Arsenal. Big days ahead. Big days ahead. Here to there says disagree in regards to it's unfair to expect the UCL and league performance, but that's not what I said. That's not what I said. So you're saying we're not saying we definitely should win it all, but exactly, like, we're saying the same thing. That's not what I said. So I never once said that I don't expect us to. I said a respectable exit is the quarterfinal, which is still mounting a challenge for it. If you go out to Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, what do you do? You know, so I'm not saying that it's just like okay for Arteta not to get out of the group. I've said if he doesn't get out of the group, he's in trouble. You know what I'm saying? So we're basically saying the same thing, that I expect us to do well in both competitions, but like if you have to like pick one or the other, you have to pick the Premier League, because if it's unlikely that you win the Champions League, which it is unlikely, it's an unlikely scenario. You have more chances of not winning the Champions League than winning it. So if you need one in order to continue to get the opportunity to maybe win the Champions League, then you have to focus on that one a little bit more, which is the Premier League. But I never once said that we shouldn't challenge in both. And to me, like, again, it's hard like quantifying what is challenging in the Champions League. If in the quarterfinals you get Real Madrid and you lose to them, that's a respectable exit for me. That's not saying that you didn't challenge. Saying you expect to beat Real Madrid, I think is a wild statement. But if you get into the quarterfinals and you're up against, I don't know, say Shakhtar Donetsk, are they even in it? No, they're not. Give me somebody else. Porto. Then yeah, you expect to go through there. You expect to go through there. So never once said that I didn't expect to challenge in both, but you also have to take into consideration that we'll come up against teams in the Champions League that may be better than us. And if we exit against those teams, we challenged. We just weren't better than so and so. Ahmed says, Jess, if you were Mikel Arteta, would you swap Rodri for Declan Rice? Which player would have a better season if they swapped the club? I think there are things that Rodri does for Manchester City that Rice still needs to work on. Rice is not the finished article, which I think Rodri is pretty much the finished article. I think if Rodri was in Arsenal's midfield and Rice was in the other, I think Arsenal would potentially win the league because Rodri is one of the best players on the planet right now. It's hard to call a defensive midfielder the best player in the world because you're always going to have the goal scorers, but taking him out of the team shows that there are players that you just can't live without, and Rodri is one of those. So you put Rodri in Arsenal's team, Arsenal win the league. If you put Rice in Manchester City's team, they don't win the league, So I think that Rice, if he continues the trajectory that he's on now, which I think you've already seen improvements in Rice's game since he's been at Arsenal, you're watching closely. If he can learn some of the things that Rodri knows, not just the dark arts things, but what he does on the ball, which I think is criminally underrated, Rice could become just as good as Rodri. He can. He's not there yet. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Chris says, hi, Professor Jess. If it comes down to that or nothing, hell, yeah, give me the Premier League. But I would prefer to win the UCL and top 4 in the Premier League than winning the Premier League alone. So I hear that. If that's, if you get to the point where you're sitting second and you have a really good opportunity to win the Champions League, meaning you're on the side that Chelsea was on when they won the Champions League, the easy side. They were on the easy side. No offense to Chelsea, but we know how that happened. They got on the easy side and they had an easier path to the final. Then you do have to, if you know that it's just going to take beating Manchester City in the final to win the Champions League, you put all your eggs in that basket and hope that you make the top 4. But you have to get there first. And right here, right now, not even out of the group yet, sitting almost top of the Premier League, you got to focus on the Premier League just a little bit more, I think. But I hear what you're saying. If we get to that situation, I'm sure Arteta makes a big decision, So yeah, we'll see where we are, but we have to be in that situation. God's power says Chelsea is underrating Arsenal. That is going to bring them down. They are confident. They're confident. Why wouldn't they be? They're at home. They've watched their team beat up on Burnley, so why wouldn't they be confident? Herbal Attraction, 3,000. By the way, you guys, make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Says, it's early to say something this controversial, though. Rodri is amazing, and talk about world class. He's it. Rice will have to prove himself. No amount of talk can make it logical to compare them yet. I don't really compare them, to be honest. I look at Rodri as the template, and so I'm like, how can we get Rice to that level? But I don't think there's any comparison between Rice and Rodri. Rodri has the titles, the trophies. He's been there long enough. Rice hasn't even played half of a season for Arsenal. But I'm also not going to say that I don't believe Rice can get to his level. No comparison yet. But can Rice reach those levels? Absolutely. Rice is 24. Rodri's 27, 28, something like that. Well, how old is Rodri? Rodri might only be 27. Because didn't he come to City when he was really young? Let's look. Yeah, he's 27. He's 27. So he could still get better, by the way. But at the current level that Rodri is at, in 3 years, can I see Rice being at that level? Yeah, I can. I think he has all the tools in his locker to become that. But yeah, there's no reason to sit around and think that Rice is just as good as Rodri, because he's not. There's no reason to even say that. Here to There says Rodri is top, but I'll take Rice plus Partey over Rodri plus Kovacic, or Rodri plus Phillips. Phillips is going to leave. He has to. He's won everything, but has done nothing, So Phillips will leave there. And then, I don't know. It's just weird, Manchester City, because how do you get a player into that team that's going to be okay with knowing that they're never going to play? Because I think that'll be the reason why we end up losing Partey after this season. Not because he doesn't want to be at Arsenal, but because as Rice continues to nail down that 6th position, Partey's importance to the team becomes less and less. And I think, Partey, he only has a couple more years left in his career. So is he going to want to spend it at Arsenal, sitting behind Rice, a player that's going to play 99% of the games at that 6th position? Or is he going to go and look at other options? So it's hard to get players to commit to not ever playing, So I get why Phillips did it. More money, better team, all that. But at some stage, you're going to want to be important to the team that you're playing for. So, and I've seen, the rumors of Paquetá going one way and Calvin Phillips going the other. That could suit everybody. But at the same stage, West Ham have just bought 2 DMs. So do they actually need another one? No. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. But I'm glad we got Rice, because I do think Rice, in terms of players on the market, has probably the best opportunity and the best ability to become Rodri-esque in the future. So yeah, Rodri is probably one of the best players on the planet right now. So I wouldn't even dare sit here and say, you know what, I think Rice is on the same level as Rodri. No, he's not. Young says the reason City keep recruiting so well, besides the context, is the consistent presence in the UCL. A deep UCL run does wonders for recruitment, maybe even more than winning the league. Yeah. And staying in the Champions League. Because I think, again, we're also underrating the Premier League in terms of how difficult it is just to qualify for the Champions League. Like this season, potentially there could be 7 teams wanting to get have the ability to get into the top 4. So you really do have to focus on the Premier League still in order to keep getting into the Champions League. But I understand being in the Champions League and being able to compete on all 4 fronts is how you're going to build a deep squad with a lot of quality, because quality players are not going to want to stay on your bench if you're not going deep into these competitions, because they want the opportunity to play. We had this conversation the other day when we talked about Tommy. Will Tommy stay? Tommy will stay if we make deep runs in the Champions League and we stay in the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup to the later rounds. But if we keep bombing out of cups and doing shitty in Europe, no, he's not going to stay, because his opportunities to play will become a lot less. So it's a fine balance of focusing on the Premier League, because that's how you qualify for the Champions League. And because the Premier League is not like La Liga or the Bundesliga, you have to really be good in the Premier League. You can't just sleepwalk your way into a Champions League spot. It's too difficult. But also realizing that the Champions League is something that you also need to focus on, because going deep in all your cup competitions is how you build a great squad. So it's a fine balance. Mikel Arteta has to get it right. So yeah, Chosen One says Rice is an absolute baller. Rodri, well, his accomplishments speaks for themselves. Definitely a great player to aspire to be on the same level as. Also, I meant all-time UCL scorer for all Arsenal. I know what you meant. Ahmed says Manchester City need to replace Phillips in January with someone like Paquetá, but West Ham are not willing to let him go until next summer. Why would West Ham have such a good opportunity here? They're a team that nobody's really speaking about, because Brighton and Newcastle and Aston Villa are getting so much praise. But West Ham have started the season really well and look like the type of team you don't want to play against if you like possession. The way that they hit you on the counter, they're clinical on the counter. They have a good player that can serve up the ball really well on set plays as well in Ward-Prowse. So West Ham look a difficult proposition here. And so if they want to make it into the Europa League and, qualify for Europe again and all that kind of stuff, then they probably do want to keep Paquetá. Why? They're not under any sort of desperation to have to sell him right now, unless he tries to force a move. But yeah, Manchester City may want Paquetá, and it may make sense for Calvin Phillips to go the other way, but you could just do that at the end of the season. West Ham have ambitions. I'm sure that they do. They don't look like a team that's just okay to be mid-table. They look like they're pushing, so I wouldn't get rid of Paquetá and give him to Manchester City for no reason. You'll still want him in the summer. Johnny said, our second team's going to see what West Ham's made of in 2 weeks from now. The Declan Rice derby, that's what we'll call it. Ansa says, after Liverpool won the Champions League, it boosted their confidence and they went on to win the league the next season, CL, then the league after. Yeah, for sure. They did, but they were still challenging Manchester City for the title. So again, you can push for the Champions League. And I think if you get to a point in the competition where you're sitting in the quarterfinals and you're looking at the side of the, the table you're on, and you're like, we have a really good chance there, then you can kind of like, maybe risk the Premier League a little bit more. But you have to also remember that like Liverpool during the time where they were winning the Champions League were also usually within a point of usually within the point of Manchester City. Is hard. And they also threw the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup almost every single season. It was Klopp did not care about those competitions until like a year ago. So fine. Are you guys willing to not pay attention to the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup for the sake of the Champions League? Are you guys going to cry at the end of the season when we went out early and we only got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League and didn't win the Premier League? Like, it's a hard balance, but we have to get there first. Wilsey says, any chance you can move your front light slightly? It's reflecting off your glasses and it's a bit distracting. You guys, this is where we're at. You're going to have to look at a little bit of a glare. I'm so sorry, but I'm not putting on my contacts and I can't move the light, and I'm trying to like keep my head down. Like if I just talk like this, then it won't glare. But like, you guys, just allow me just for today, I need my glasses and you guys have to deal with the glare. I'm sorry. Boy says City going off the boil because Rodri got suspended doesn't mean he's world class. It just means the replacements are that poor. Pep shouldn't manage correctly. That he's let go of Gundogan. Nah. So the reason why Manchester City, so also you can go the other direction. Just because their replacements are not great doesn't mean that Rodri's not world class either. Like Rodri is world class. I'll stand on that. I don't think anybody can say that they're not, like he's not. He's the best defensive midfielder on the planet right now, comfortably. So Rodri is world class. Their replacements aren't great, but he's so important to that team. They've completely fallen apart without him. So, yeah, for me, he's just world class. And like you watch him play, he's very good. Like I don't know how else to really say it. Johnny says, I cried enough after the Liverpool Anfield match. Now I'm expecting anything. Little can hurt me. Johnny J. Wick says, I noticed the glare 75 minutes ago, but I didn't want to say anything. I said it at the beginning that you guys are going to have to deal with this glare. Okay. Let me live, but you're not going to have to deal with it for very long because I'm going to have to go now. It's 9:30 and we got things to do. I still have to record a preview and stuff for the weekend. So, I love y'all, but it's time to go. This was a fun stream. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. I did a little bit of a poll to see if you guys are doing your job and liking the video, and 87% of you guys said of course you're liking it. So thank you guys so much. I am working on content. Let's see, what can I tell you guys? I'm working on Gooner League coming on for the Chelsea post-match on Patreon. And then you guys know you're going to get a watch along and player ratings for Chelsea. They're already up. So you guys can go ahead and set your notifications, whether or not YouTube gives them to you or not. That's not up to me, but you guys can set your notifications now for those two. And between now and then, there's going to be a preview. And of course, I'm going to be live. I already went live today. I'll be live on Thursday, and we'll see if we'll go live on Friday as well. So enjoy the rest of your day. I've enjoyed my time with you guys, even though you guys have talked about me like a dog in my glare. But I enjoy talking to you guys always. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. There's some clips that have come out over the last couple of days as well, if you guys want to check those out. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys. I'm really like looking down like this, trying not to get no glare. You guys got me messed up.